Hello, my name is Chris Hayes. I'm the Washington editor of The Nation magazine. This week I wrote the cover story in the magazine, which is entitled "The Choice: Why Barack Obama is the Best Candidate to Bring About a Progressive Majority." Obviously, these are one of those times when people who normally see eye to eye on politics have found themselves having heated arguments around the dinner table and over email exchanges. There's a lot of rancor and division, I think, among progressives as they try to evaluate, now that the field is down to two candidates on the Democratic side, which of the two Democratic candidates they should support. So that's part of the reason that I wrote the piece, was to just give a sense of, having covered the campaign myself, how I was thinking through the choice and who I thought was the better candidate from the perspective of progressives. And I think that candidate is Barack Obama for a few reasons. The first thing to think about is to look at, the domestic policy area, in which Barack Obama, if you go back to his pre-Senate days when he was in Illinois, he was a community organizer and a civil rights attorney and then a state senator. As a state senator, he really had an incredibly progressive record. In fact, if you talk to progressives and lefties of various hues and stripes in Chicago, they'll tell you he was a loyal ally. He really fought for progressive causes down in Springfield. And when we elected him from Illinois, I was living in Illinois at the time, we elected him, we really thought we were getting a kind of Paul Wellstone figure and sending another Paul Wellstone type senator to the Senate. Now, it didn't quite work out that way. I think he shaded his views towards the center. He established a record in the Senate, which was in the sort of center-left part of the party. And the way he talks about politics is not this kind of zealous advocacy on behalf of the marginalized and the poor and on justice and peace that we had perhaps hoped. It's a much more kind of bipartisan unity message, which can be frustrating at times, I will admit. That said, if you look at his domestic policy pronouncements during this campaign and compare them to Hillary Clinton's, they're more or less in the same ballpark. There are some differences, notably on health care, in which Senator Clinton, I think, does have a better plan and is marginally more progressive. That said, I think it could be a little misleading to focus too much on what the policy positions are in a campaign on domestic policy, particularly because it's not like the president's going to get inaugurated and print out their website and then sign everything into law. It's going to play out through a very fraught interplay with the legislative branch. So we're not quite sure what we're going to get in domestic policy. On foreign policy, however, the president's worldview, attitude, and approach has a much more sort of singular stamp on what America's foreign policy is going to be. And there, I think, Senator Obama has really positioned himself in a more progressive way than Senator Clinton. At almost every turn, again, the substantive things they've offered have been pretty close, but starting with Senator Obama's opposition to the Iraq War in 2002, where he actually attended an anti-war rally. That's kind of been scrubbed from the history, but he actually went to an anti-war rally and gave the speech at a time when he was a Senate candidate. From that initial opposition to the war, when Senator Clinton voted for the use of the authorization of force, through now in the campaign, I think it's fair to say Senator Clinton has sort of played hawk to Obama's dove at most turns. She's attacked him for him renouncing the first strike use of nuclear weapons in an interview. She attacked him in a debate when he said he would have a meeting with Ahmadinejad of Iran without preconditions. Again, in a recent debate, she talked about being the best equipped to go up against Senator McCain because of this kind of toughness. And I think that Senator Obama articulated well in the recent debate, in which he said he didn't want to just end the war, but he wanted to end the mindset that had led us into war. And I think he's outlined a kind of liberal internationalist, less militaristic foreign policy vision that should win the support of progressives, and gives me a lot more confidence that the foreign policy under an Obama administration would be less militaristic and would curtail a lot of the excesses of the Bush administration. I think the final question, and this is really where most of the essay in The Nation tends to focus its energy, is we're at an interesting moment right now in which short-term trends such as the crumbling economy, the continued occupation in Iraq without sight, those short-term trends have turned the public against both the Bush administration, the Republican Party, and conservatism as an ideology. But there are longer-term trends which over the course of 10 or 15 years in public opinion show an electorate moving in the left's direction on a whole variety of issues. Everything from whether people feel they're being excessively taxed, to whether government is too big or too small, to whether corporations have too much power, whether unions are a good or bad thing, whether preemptive war is a good idea. Along all these metrics, we're seeing a public moving in the right direction. And this is one of those, because of the abject failure of the Bush administration, the implosion of conservatism. This is one of those rare moments that comes along in American political life in which we could actually have a kind of sea change election and put together what could be a progressive majority. That is, a governing majority with a mandate, a president elected with a mandate, a House and Senate that are both dominated by the Democratic Party, and all of them working together to make some large progressive change. And I think the question, the operative question to ask yourself as a progressive is, which of these two candidates, since these are the two we're choosing between, and neither of them speak particularly in the language we talk about, neither of them necessarily advocate all the issues we'd like to see them advocate for, but in deciding between the two, I think that the real operative question is, which of these two is more likely to bring about this progressive majority? And I think Barack Obama has shown himself to have that potential over Hillary Clinton, which is not to denigrate Senator Clinton at all. But if you look at a few things, one is just the remarkable political appeal of Senator Obama. In some senses, he shouldn't even really be in this race. I mean, he had a massive hill to climb in sheer name recognition. Obviously, he has this sort of funny name. He doesn't have a lot of experience on the national stage. There's no reason that he should have been able to raise the kind of money he can, or bring out the new voters, or create the kind of excitement he has, but he really just is a very appealing, able, competent, and electrifying speaker and politician. And I think that appeal can be transmitted into the progressive agenda. That's, in some senses, the kind of $64,000 question. He's also delivered in the early stages in the primary on one of the horriest promises of politicians is to bring new voters out and new voters to the polls. And we've seen that in Iowa, in which the amount of caucus voters more than doubled. We saw it in South Carolina, where the youth vote went from 25,000 to 75,000, tripled in 4 years between 2004 and 2008. And we've also seen it in the way that people who were formerly sort of, or kind of recovering Republicans have kind of flocked to the campaign. We've seen it in the way that red state senators who were worried about down-ticket effects of who will be the Democratic nominee have cast their lot with Senator Obama. So there's a lot of data to indicate that that Senator Obama is the figure around whom this kind of progressive majority is most likely to form. And I think that with this kind of once-in-a-generation opportunity to have such an election like the 1980 election, in which conservatism was able to sweep into office with this broad mandate behind the figure of Ronald Reagan, given that we have this once-in-a-generation opportunity, that the choice is clear, that Barack Obama is the better of the two candidates we have to kind of bring about such a sea change in American politics. And that's why I wrote the piece. Thank you for watching, and I hope you continue to read and enjoy The Nation.